Fully charged attacks in Elden Ring are some of the nastiest moves in the entire game. It's no secret that charge attacks are the key to completely trivializing quite a few bosses. But there's also some bosses that act a little too crazy to consistently get the charged attacks on. And I decided it was time to put charge attacks to the test for the entire game, clearing both base game and the DLC, as well as the remembrances I find fun along the way. And while some bosses can be scripted and absolutely melted with this, others not so much. Like the video and be sure to subscribe. And let's giga bonk some bosses. Killing Godskin Duo was top priority for this run, so that I could have unlimited smithing stones and be able to experiment with a lot more weapons, and not feel as tied down to the 1 or 2 I commit smithing levels to. So that was first. I picked up some good smacking weapons, with the weapon of choice to get me to Farum Azula, the Gut Sword. I grabbed the most essential buffs for this run, the Spiked Crazier and Axe Talisman, as well as Flame Grant Me Strength alongside the Dectus Medallions. I killed the Troll and Altus for his bonking stick, and the Putrid Avatar for the Fire Shrouding Crack tier, just for one of the first bosses. I knew I would want to smack at least one boss with this weapon. It only feels right for this type of run. Next, I butchered Patches, and it was time for Margit. A lot of setup was required, but it paid off well. With only one talisman slot, damage was bound to be a little limited, but slapping on the Ash of War determination and the ability to script the Omen Fella made Margit a pushover as usual. I snagged the Iron Whet Blade, then grabbed the Ritual Sword Talisman for my second slot. With the Dragon Fister dead, I needed the better version of Determination, Royal Knight's Resolve. So another easy scripted fight was up, as I had to send the Godskin Noble to the Shadow Realm. I also grabbed the Somber 7 and got the Grafted Blade Greatsword up to a +9, but the Greatsword was still better. RKR is just too good for its own good, so this was the weapon of choice to get me to the point of progress that I needed to hit. On to the next Great Ruin, and the Red Wolf could have been an easy one hit, but bro just doesn't settle down, and I was not about to die to a dumbass dog. Ronaldo is very hard, as you can see. With 2 Great Ruins, I made the Mad Dash right for Leyndell though. This was one of the more satisfying DTS fights I've ever done. I can't even lie. And the same sentiment can be said about Godfrey and Morgott. Fire Giant gave me the perfect posture break and turned it into an easy fight. My damage was so gross, I didn't even have to focus on the weak spots for phase 2. Just smacking his ass and feet was perfectly fine. Another easy scripted fight with the Godskin duo, and that was full Smithing Stone availability, so the urge to enter the DLC was at max, and it was time for Mohg. I swapped to Great Stars since it just goes crazy against Mohg, and I didn't want to have to spend a lot of time on this nerd. Great Stars is my saving grace against this boss. He got crumpled pretty easy. With him dead, I realized I hadn't killed Radon yet, so for him I decided to go all out. I got Seppuku, Vare's White Mask, and the Kindred of Rot Exaltation for some giga buff. I chose the Watchdog staff and was pretty quickly disappointed by it. Not having the Ash of War for either RKR, Determination, or even Cragblade does hinder this build pretty hard. The damage is good, don't get me wrong, but RKR would have turned this into a 2-tap. And more yellow means more dopamine in my brain. But I wanted DLC access for all the goods that it has, especially for this build. I yoinked the two-handed talisman and treated it like base kit for the rest of the run. And the blood-sucking crack tier would come in nice for a couple of bosses throughout. Next, I told the depressed man to stay sad forever and stripped him of his clothes after he deleted himself. I did the scavenger hunt for all the Skadoos, which meant killing Gaius first. I did not want to have to hit my head against this nerd, so I just busted out my holy spiky balls and melted him pretty quick. The other boss for Skadoos is the Hippo, and yeah, this went well for him, I'd say. With some decent Skadoos and the DLC looted, I did want to fight Mesmer quick, since I don't like fighting him at too high of a level. I decided to use the Celebrant Skull for him, since this is my first playthrough using this weapon, and I would learn to love it. Mesmer was a solid fight with charge attacks. I got a disgusting double hit during the beginning of his phase 2, right into a stagger, so he became pretty trivialized from here on out.
Just give up and die.
But it was time to lock in on the base game and clean it up. I wanted to fight Fortisax, so I had to go through Sewer Mohg. I grabbed the Lord of Blood's Exaltation for an extra damage boost at the beginning of fights, and slapped around the Omen pretty hard. The blood-sucking crack tier gave me a fat chunk of added damage, and don't worry, even with this much damage being dealt, I still almost choked and shackled instead of healed. I adore the Fortisax fight, and given my HP and Sad Boy's armor, I got to greed like a demon. Even just going for his leg with RKR butchered the poor fella, but I'll never not get a kick out of the damage potential in this game, and how you don't even have to fight some bosses properly to still annihilate them. But time to clean up the base game, and Malekith is pretty easy when you deal more damage than he does. And Gideon is also pretty easy when you can mink him before he even processes what's happening. Onto the Elden Chad, and damage-wise, the Guts Sword was great, but I do kind of regret using it with how slow it is. It made the fight just a bit more annoying than I would have liked, and I think the Skull or Fist weapons would have absolutely bodied him. And that was the weapon I decided to bust out for Radabeast. I had really learned to love it, and it dunked on Radagon pretty well. Elden Beast was as annoying as Elden Beast tends to be, but breaking his posture was easy enough, and I just had to survive the spammy nonsense to get it done smoothly. I felt like face tanking and smacking around a Dragon Lord because it just sounded amusing to me, and it was amusing to me. Some builds can make Plasty a bit of a bitch, but others can make him pretty goofy and fun, and this was definitely the latter. I wanted to see how the mindless greed worked in the DLC, so I went knocking on the Dancing Lion's doorstep, and I think he is one of the best examples that charged attacks can be a pain to get off on some bosses. Switching to a weapon with more reach obviously would have helped, but dude is out here doing so many backflips that a charged attack can just be too much of a time commitment to hit him, but luckily my damage and greed carried me pretty well. I fire infused my Great Stars for Romina and did some disgusting damage. I expected her to slither away from a lot of the attacks, but luckily I knew the ones I could punish decently well and took her out easily as a result. And now, Radahn. And I felt it was only right to swap to the bonkiest weapon around, the Giant Crusher. I fully committed to getting all the buffs for Poison, Bleed, and Frenzy, did the bullshit hot swapping, and had one of the easier Radahn fights of my life. Last but not least, Malenia's Phase 1 got absolutely crumpled with Gaius' Lance and RKR. But once all the buffs wore off in Phase 2, it became a pretty rough fight without consistent stance breaks. So after a couple tries, I ended up switching to Craigblade. It's just such an incredible Ash of War against Malenia. And that was an entire playthrough of just charging my big attacks. Heavy attacks are straight up goated. As long as you're willing to commit some vigor, since trades are going to become inevitable with some fights, it creates such a simple way of playing the game. It felt honest even though I was doing such big damage. Be sure to like the video if you made it this far, and I'll see you in the next one.